Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, January 25th, 2016. I am Dave Biddle, very happy to be joined by our Alex Gleitman. Alex, big news in recruiting last night. Rodjay Burns, three-star corner from Louisville, Kentucky, decided to flip from Louisville to Ohio State. I have to think he's highly underrated, him being a kind of a low three-star, mid-three-star kid. Tell the listeners more about Rodjay Burns.
Yeah, I mean, Rajay's he's a very athletic kid, a long kid at 6'2", the type of big corners that both Chris Ash and Greg Schiano covet in their system. I think he's a kid. This year he played safety on his high school team, so I think he's a kid who gives them versatility in being able to play both cornerback and safety. And Ohio State came into the weekend wanting two more defensive backs. Obviously, they wanted kind of a tier one guy, someone who's kind of been on their list since the start of this process, in either Jordan Fuller or DeMar Hamlin. The feeling inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center is that they did a good job with Hamlin last weekend on the official visit, but probably not enough to keep him away from the hometown pit. So they do feel that they have a good shot with Jordan Fuller, who is at Michigan this weekend. But then, it was kind of Carlos Becker and Rodjay Burns visiting this weekend. It was going to be an uphill battle for Carlos Becker, Florida State, closer to his hometown in Kissimmee, Florida. His mom didn't even make the trip with him up to Ohio State. I think that's kind of a telling point that, Carlos is interested in Ohio State, but not I don't know if Mama is necessarily, and I don't know how serious the interest is, no matter how good of a time he had this weekend. So, going out and getting Rodjay Burns was definitely a priority. The staff was willing to take him. They like him a lot as a player. A lot of people on the boards I see are saying, well, they didn't offer him till December. Well, I think it was a case of a guy they've always been evaluating and seeing the full senior film and looking at the defensive board picture. They were like, well, this guy could play at Ohio State, and this is the guy we want. And as I said, he gives the staff a player that they need at defensive back and a guy who could play both cornerback and safety, which is definitely valuable at this point in the process.
Yeah, I like those tall defensive backs, all 6'2" of Rodjay Burns, as you mentioned. And then a young man that's not very tall, Sam Bruce, 5'8", but extremely talented, the 4-star wide receiver from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, St. Thomas Aquinas. He is still committed to Miami, but what is the latest? Do you think the Buckeyes will land Sam Bruce, or just what's the latest with him, Alex?
Yeah, it's interesting. This one's been a wild ride over the last week or so. So I think when Urban Meyer and Zach Smith went down to South Florida last week, we've been reporting on Bucknuts that space is extremely tight in the class. Situation is fluid. There's some unclarity in terms of take and not take when it comes to positions that are, as I've been told, or as it's been put to me, quote unquote, off the board, meaning, Ohio State needed 2 DBs and preferably a defensive tackle. So anything outside of that was technically, quote unquote, off the board, and adding another wide receiver was off the board. So Urban Meyer and Zach Smith went down there last week, kind of not knowing if they'd have room for Sam Bruce, but all indications, I could flat out say it, Sam Bruce gave them the indication he wanted to be a Buckeye. You saw the Zach Smith tweets, you saw the Dwayne Haskins tweets. At that point, even my sources inside Ohio State recruiting were telling me that, while it wasn't clear whether there was a spot or not for Bruce, that they thought he would eventually be in the class, but it was ultimately Urban Meyer's call. Fast forward to this weekend, Mark Richt visits Bruce right after Urban Meyer does, tries to get him back in the fold. They get him to push up his official visit to Miami a week. He was supposed to go next weekend. He went this past weekend. Him and his mother had an absolutely great time. And Sam was ready to come home and basically say, Ohio State, I'm not going to sit here and wait for you. I feel good about Miami. I'm going to make a commitment. So it kind of took a complete 180. Sam was going to commit to Miami last night. Ohio State called him and said, Sam, listen, we know, you want to be a Buckeye. We know we haven't been able to tell you yes or no there's a spot. Give us, 24 hours. Just give us a little bit more time, one more day to figure this thing out. And, we'll have an answer for you tomorrow. And then feel free to make your announcement either way. No hard feelings. So I think Ohio State, I mean, it's very clear, Sam Bruce, and he obliged to that. It's very clear he wants to be a Buckeye. The question is, does Urban Meyer have a spot for him or not? And it's a really tough decision because there's a lot more involved than just, there's just a lot more involved than taking Sam Bruce over Malik Harrison or taking Sam Bruce over Rodjay Burns. A lot of people on the board are trying to say, how could they take those guys over Sam Bruce? It's not about that. Sam Bruce is, as I said, he's an quote-unquote off-the-board guy. It's a completely different situation. There's a lot of things at play here. Some of those things, we can't even discuss, out of courtesy and respect to Ohio State and our sources. So I think you just have to trust Urban Meyer to figure this one out. He's going to make a call one way or another. Right now I'm leaning 60-40 that Bruce does end up at Miami. It seems that, at first Urban's like, give me that playmaker, and now they're kind of thinking a little bit more logically here in terms of space for this class and the future class and the future of the Ohio State roster. So I'm going to lean 60-40 to Miami, but this one's taken a lot of twists and turns, and it's going to even be interesting today. I could see throughout the day even the answer changing yes or no on Sam Bruce.
One reason they might not have a spot for Sam Bruce is we're hearing Cory Smith is going to be granted his 6th year of eligibility, the source being Dontre Wilson on Instagram. So this is not confirmed by Ohio State to say the least, but Cory Smith and Dontre Wilson were having a conversation on Instagram. One of their friends / an Ohio State fan interjected and asked if Cory Smith is going to come back next year for a 6th year, if he got his extra year of eligibility. And Cory Smith didn't answer, but Dontre Wilson did. Dontre Wilson said, yes, sir. So, again, not exactly confirmation, but good news, because I don't think Dontre Wilson would say that unless, he had it on good authority. So, again, we're waiting official word from Ohio State, but it sounds like Cory Smith is going to come back, and that's huge, Alex. I know he had the drop early in the 2014 season against Virginia Tech. Everybody blamed him for the Virginia Tech loss, but that kid, he's a talented wide receiver. He really played well in the postseason in 2014 as a wide receiver and on special teams, really, especially on special teams. He was good as a wide receiver, but he was just a demon on special teams. Played in 4 games last year. He was suspended for 1 game. If he would have played in 5 games, he would not have been eligible for a 6th year of eligibility. But since he only played in 4 games, sounds like he's going to be granted that extra year. And that's huge because the Buckeyes are going to have such a young receiving core next year. To have a veteran guy like Cory Smith, that is huge for the Buckeyes if this works out, Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, a lot of people on the front row and just across the Ohio State blogosphere, I kind of see a lot of people saying, "Oh, we don't need save the spot for 2016. We don't need Cory Smith." I think people who say that, no offense to them, they're absolutely crazy. As you said, I think people are remembering the drops, the inconsistencies, some of the off-field transgressions, and I do admit, that stuff, you don't want that stuff in your program, especially the off-the-field stuff. But at the same time, as you said, Cory Smith really came on, was a key part of the 2014 postseason. Some of the blocks he laid, especially one that got penalized against Wisconsin that wasn't a penalty. Those are the things that really stick out in my mind. The way he was willing, as you said, to put in the effort on special teams and really start to turn his career around. I think with Mike Thomas and Jalen Marshall departing and this wide receiver group being kind of a younger group, I think having a veteran in Cory Smith is definitely going to be key. I think he's got maybe the most physical. He even last year or the year before had the most physical talent of any wide receiver on the Ohio State roster. That's how it's been put to me by guys. Just mentally and maturity-wise, it needed to click. And I think people don't give players the benefit of the doubt enough of being able to mature, being able to grow as players, being able to get better as players and work on their game and craft and hone their game. So I think you're going to see development out of Cory Smith next year should he come back once we get the official word. I think it's actually it's almost like signing another recruit at this point. That's a big pickup for Ohio State. You basically have a proven commodity coming back to be a big-time part of your passing game.
And last thing here, real quick, Ohio State basketball back in action tonight at home against Penn State. Game will be televised on Big Ten Network. Begins at 7 p.m. Buckeyes are 12-8 on the season, 4-3 in Big Ten play. Nittany Lions 11-9 overall. Just 2-5 in Big Ten play, but they're not a terrible team. I've watched them a couple times. They're not awful. And you look at the spread for this game, Alex, Buckeyes are favored by 8.5, which that's not a huge spread, especially you think Penn State's pretty bad at basketball, but they're not terrible. Again, Penn State's 11-9, 2-5 in the Big Ten. Buckeyes 12-8, 4-3 in the Big Ten. 7 p.m. Big Ten Network. I think the Buckeyes will win this game, Alex, and they need to get some confidence back. I thought they played pretty well against Purdue. They kind of just let that slip away late, but hopefully they can get a win and take it to Penn State a little bit tonight, Alex.
Yeah, I think they're going to cover the 8.5 points tonight. I think they saw that, I think it's a young team again. There's no excuses at this point in the year. They kind of need to grow up a little bit. And I think a lot of their struggles do come from a lack of leadership. And a lack of leadership can sometimes be related to youth. But guys need to step up. The effort needs to be more consistent. I think you saw a really good effort against Purdue. But I think they also saw that sometimes effort's not enough. And a better Purdue team in their own house beat them. But I think they'll come back. They'll play a really good game against Penn State. I think the effort will be there. They kind of need a win at this point. They've lost, I think, 2 out of 3 at the very least. And then they got Maryland at home this weekend, where actually, by the way, football's hosting a junior day that Sunday. So they know, after getting blasted by Maryland in College Park, that they're going to have to come back and play a tough game at home. I think the effort's going to be there. I think they're going to come out. They're going to jump on Penn State early. And I think they're going to win by at least, as you said, the 9 points to cover the spread.
Steve Hellwagon's preview of the game is on the site. It's free for everybody, so check that out if you haven't already. Thank you very much to Alex Gleitman. Great insights, Alex, and thanks to the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I appreciate it, and hope you have a great day. Take it away, best damn band in the land.